Chapter 1 You foolish woman. We're actually Dad's biological children. Just die already. When you're gone, everything will belong to us. My adopted daughter, Hannah, who I raised single-handedly, looked at me with a twisted expression. Taking advantage of my paralysis from the car accident, she slapped me, pulled my hair, and tore at my mouth. She treated me like an evil stepmother, wishing she could strangle me right there in my hospital bed. Meanwhile, my adopted son, Danny, whom I cherished like my own child, ransacked my belongings, searching for jewelry and handbags to sell off for his own indulgences. How can a supposedly wealthy heiress have such worthless junk? Are you trying to insult a beggar? Danny, furious, yanked my hair and slammed my head against the wall. To tell you the truth, you're capable of having children. The marriage test results were forged. Otherwise, why would someone like you, a rich heiress, willingly serve us like a dog? Danny boasted, his despicable grin revealing the truth that made everything go black before my eyes. My whole body trembled with anger as images flashed through my mind. It turned out that from the very beginning, I had been calculated against. My husband, mother-in-law, and even my adopted children had all conspired to deceive me, all for the sake of seizing my inheritance. After my parents' deaths and my own paralysis, they revealed their true colors, not only humiliating me but also plotting to take all my assets. My heart pounded and I couldn't catch my breath. I died right there. But then the sounds around me grew clearer, and when I opened my eyes again, I found myself standing in my room perfectly fine. I looked at the time. It was 5 years ago. Could it be that the heavens, seeing how miserable my previous life was, had given me a second chance? Just as I was thinking this, a backpack was harshly thrown at my face. You old witch, you can't have kids of your own, and now you want to ruin my happiness? Why did my dad marry such a troublesome woman like you? Hannah looked at me with hatred, just because I didn't allow her to live with her delinquent boyfriend at such a young age. Recalling the past, I felt nothing but coldness towards this adopted daughter for whom I had poured out my heart. I didn't try to persuade her as I used to. Instead, I threw the backpack back at her, letting her happily run off to her rogue boyfriend. Soon after, Danny also woke up, lazily stretching out his hand to me. Hey, living expenses. I took out my wallet, but he snatched it away. So stingy. A couple of thousand and you're being tight-fisted? My dad must be blind to marry such a miserly fool like you. He had picked up foul language from hanging out with bad influences and was incredibly rude. I didn't bother persuading him to be better anymore. I decided to let him fend for himself. Chapter 2. I always saw myself as a good mother, even to my adopted children, to whom I had no blood relation. I gave them all my heart and soul, but what did I get in return? Their resentment and disdain. At the root of it all, I had to thank my dear husband, Harry. I drove straight to Harry's company without calling ahead. This company, which was supposedly built from scratch by Harry, was actually a subsidiary of my family's business. It was only through my father's endless financial support and connections that it achieved its current status. A man who had nothing, elevated by my love-struck foolishness, had forgotten his place. I bypassed the receptionist and walked straight to Harry's office, disregarding his assistant's attempts to stop me, and pushed the door open. Inside, two figures hastily disentangled themselves, knocking over a pile of documents in their panic. Seeing who it was, I exclaimed in surprise, "Jenny, you're here too?" My good friend Jenny, her hair disheveled and her shirt unbuttoned, looked at me, her breath unsteady. She coyly brushed back her hair and smiled at me. "I just started working here and came to say hello to your husband." I linked arms with Jenny and complained to Harry, "Jenny's here and you didn't even call me?" Harry hadn't expected my unexpected visit, as I usually trusted him completely. His face showed displeasure, tinged with the anger of having his plans interrupted. "You came without warning. I could have come down to meet you," he said, his tone evasive but attempting to sound considerate, hoping to make me feel guilty for my sudden intrusion. Jenny nonchalantly adjusted her shirt and spoke in a sarcastic tone. "You are so fortunate. Harry loves you so much. It's enviable. If only I could find such a wonderful husband." She now had a hint of seduction in her eyes, looking towards Harry with an alluring gaze. Harry, avoiding eye contact, began picking up the scattered documents. I invited Jenny to lunch and she didn't decline. At the restaurant, I asked with a smile, "Why haven't you found a boyfriend yet? Everyone from our class is already taken." She extended her hand, caressing the ring on her pinky finger, which looked very much like the wedding ring I shared with Harry. "Not everyone is as lucky as you, the rich heiress who married a handsome and wealthy husband right after graduation, with no worries in life," Jenny sighed, her smile a mix of envy and mockery. I replied openly, "That's true. My husband is so handsome and I have money. I even get to be a mother without any pain. Life is too smooth without any excitement." Jealousy flickered in Jenny's eyes. I continued to boast about how well Harry treated me, how lovely our 2 adopted children were, and how much my mother-in-law adored me. Jenny's face grew darker, and she eventually lost her appetite, drinking only water. I advised her, "Jenny, you should find a man like my husband. Even though I can't have children, he never despises me. You can still have children, so you should find someone even better." Jenny's smile was meaningful. "Your husband is so handsome. It's hard to find a better man than him." We shared a knowing smile. Chapter 3. That evening, my mother-in-law called. She started with, "Hannah, you need to buy your uncle another house in the school district. As the eldest daughter-in-law, this should be your responsibility. Why do I always have to remind you?" She rambled on, treating me like an endless source of money. Every time she contacted me, it was either for a house, a car, money, or to find a job or a partner for her younger son. Her demands were always high: a large house in a good area, a luxury car worth at least $30,000, and a well-off woman for her son. She never considered his lack of education, job, and savings. I grew tired and interrupted her. "Mom, I just bought him an apartment. Why do you need another house in the school district?" She laughed heartily over the phone. "He found a girlfriend, and she's already expecting. Your nephew will need to go to school eventually, won't he?" In the past, I would have been happy for my brother-in-law. Since I couldn't have children, I felt I owed Harry a complete family. If his brother had a child, it would be a consolation for my inability. Fueled by regret and guilt, I let them lead me by the nose, using my parents and my money to fulfill their endless needs. This time I refused outright. If they need a house in the school district, sell the apartment I bought before. The down payment should be enough. There was silence on the other end of the line. After a long pause, my mother-in-law spoke, her tone much colder. "He's lost his job. How can he afford a loan while supporting a wife and child? You have so much money. You can't just let them struggle, can you?" I laughed coldly. "No job, no savings, yet he dares to get married and have a child? From the start, you expected me to support them, didn't you?" She didn't mince words. "If you could give my family a son, would I need to count on someone else's child? Hannah, think carefully. You can't have children. In the future, you'll rely on your nephew for support." "I can't have children? Ha! What a clever tactic. In my past life, it kept me guilty until my death. I once believed that my inability to have children led Harry to cheat and have children with someone else. But I was the fool. On the phone, I said, "Mom, I've scheduled an appointment with a specialist abroad. I'll be going for a checkup soon. With today's medical advancements, I'll give Harry a child." Then I hung up. I wondered how panicked she was now and what tricks Harry would use to placate me. Chapter 4. Sure enough, when Harry returned home from work, he was visibly upset. He liked to give me the silent treatment. If he ignored me, I would naturally become anxious and try to please him, catering to all his and his family's demands. To be fair, Harry was indeed very handsome. In his early 30s, age had only made him more charming. His looks alone could make anyone swoon. I fell for Harry at first sight. More accurately, I fell into the gentle trap he set for me. We met a few years ago at a business party. I was chatting with a friend and accidentally spilled red wine all over Harry. I expected him to be angry, but instead he comforted me. When our eyes met, his deep and gentle gaze captivated me, and I couldn't let go. The more we spent time together, the more I realized how gentle and composed he was. Most importantly, he was tall and handsome, comparable to a movie star. Since then, I pursued him actively, but he always played hard to get, saying he wasn't good enough for me while treating me exceptionally well. He was from a rural area, and I was a city heiress. He worried he couldn't provide me with a luxurious life and feared my parents' disapproval. I was madly infatuated and even had a falling out with my parents, almost severing ties. He humbled himself before my parents, swearing he would treat me well. Then the marriage test results came out and our roles reversed. The test showed I was infertile, unable to give him a complete family. While I wept inconsolably, he gently wiped my tears and assured me that it was okay. We could always adopt, he said. A boy and a girl to make a perfect family. I believed him. Now, looking back after being reborn, I found those words laughable. I didn't speak to Harry all evening. Normally, if he gave me the cold shoulder, I would have been groveling at his feet by now, desperate to please him. My unusual behavior unsettled him, prompting him to finally ask, "Hannah, what's going on with you today?" Feigning confusion, I replied, "What do you mean?" He exploded in frustration. First, your attitude towards my mother, then insisting on an overseas checkup. Are you trying to end this marriage? Feigning surprise, I responded, "Didn't you find your mother's demands unreasonable? You buy your brother a house then. And as for my checkup, I'm just trying to give you a child. Why are you so panicked?" Harry was momentarily speechless, glaring at me in an attempt to intimidate me into submission. I met his gaze calmly, no longer the woman who feared being abandoned by a man because of my supposed infertility. After a long silence, he resorted to his usual manipulative tactics. "You know your family is wealthy. What's wrong with helping my brother? Hannah, you were the one who insisted on marrying me. My brother is yours too." I scoffed. "Harry, get this straight. You married me, not my parents. No matter how wealthy they are, that doesn't give you the right to treat me as your personal ATM." For the first time, I resolutely rejected Harry's demands, leaving him dumbfounded. He stared at me, bewildered by my sudden assertiveness. "And why do you need another checkup abroad? The initial tests were done by my close friend. Don't you trust him?" In my past life, whenever I suggested further tests or treatments, Harry would blow up. He would accuse me of not trusting his friend and warn against making our infertility public, fearing it would bring shame to him among relatives. Whenever I cried from his scolding, he would comfort me, saying he couldn't bear to see me suffer through fertility treatments. He'd remind me of our adopted children, Danny and Hannah, and how we were the happiest family in the world. I was always convinced, holding on to guilt and gratitude, letting him manipulate me completely. Chapter 5. Harry and I were now in a Cold War. He expected me to come crawling back after a few days of being ignored, looking forward to seeing me in tears. In the morning, I made breakfast as usual, but only for myself. When they woke up to an empty dining table, each of them threw a fit. Hannah slammed her backpack on the table and cursed, "What the hell is your problem? Walking around with a face like someone died. Who the hell do you think you are?" Danny, equally annoyed, demanded, "Give me money. I'll eat out." They ate my food, lived in my house, and enjoyed my care. Yet they couldn't even call me mom. I used to think they lacked manners due to their early loss of parents, believing that with patience they would change. However, they simply despised me. In my past life, what on earth was I thinking, enduring such disrespect from adopted children? I was furious and coldly laughed. "Fine, if you dislike me so much, take care of yourselves from now on." With that, I went to pack my bags. Harry watched with cold eyes. Even as I dragged my suitcase to the door, he didn't try to stop me. Danny was about to chase after me for money, but Hannah held him back. Hannah yelled after me, "Good riddance. This house is better off without a deadweight like you." I drove back to my parents' house, leaving that family to fend for themselves. In my past life, a car accident took my parents' lives, and I didn't even get to see them one last time. I never thought I'd have another chance to see them. Combined with everything from before and after my rebirth, I couldn't help but cry bitterly. When I arrived home, I clung to my mother, sobbing uncontrollably. My mother, heartbroken, kept asking me what was wrong. My father, with his graying hair, paced anxiously, unable to express his concern overtly. I told them that Danny and Hannah were Harry's biological children. Harry had fathered them with a girl from his village at the age of 18, and they had been raised by his mother, who claimed they were relatives' children. I wasn't infertile. Harry had forged the test results to justify raising his children openly. Everyone in that household knew the truth except me. After hearing my story, my parents almost fainted from anger, but they quickly reassured me that no matter what, they would always be my strongest support. I felt incredibly fortunate that the heavens had given me a second chance to take control of my destiny. Chapter 6. I reached out to Jenny and invited her for a coffee. She arrived, exuding the mature charm of a sophisticated woman. With a smile, she toyed with the ring on her finger and asked, "Did you and Harry have a fight? You look terrible." I sighed. My dad's company is in trouble. I'm afraid to tell Harry and can only confide in you. She was startled. What's going on? Is it serious? My mom told me in confidence. We're on the verge of bankruptcy. You know how my dad is. He won't admit it to me, I said, looking distressed and on the verge of tears. Jenny offered some comforting words and suggested I tell Harry. I shook my head. No, don't tell Harry. He has enough on his plate already. Jenny seemed to mull things over but said nothing more. Later, I received a call from Hannah, asking me to come home. I complied and returned to find my mother-in-law sitting on the couch, as haughty and sharp-tongued as a royal dowager. "Mom, what brings you here?" I asked with a sweet smile. She sniffed disdainfully, barely glancing at me. "We need to talk face to face. You've been out for hours. Were you out with some other man?" "No, I was with a close friend. She's very wealthy. I just wanted to strengthen our relationship to help Harry in the future." My mother-in-law raised an eyebrow. "How wealthy are we talking?" I elaborated, painting a vivid picture. "My family can't compare. My dad works for her dad. They own companies worldwide. What are we in comparison?" My mother-in-law could hardly fathom such wealth. "Is she married?" she asked, eyes gleaming. With a nonchalant air, I replied, "No, her standards are very high. She won't settle for just anyone." Her eyes darted as she began scheming, forgetting her initial intent to berate me. That night, Harry came home and we slept in separate rooms. His expression was dark and brooding. Hannah and Danny didn't come home. One was likely with her delinquent boyfriend, the other off gambling or with unsavory friends. These two were raised in the countryside, spoiled rotten by their grandmother. Smoking, drinking, fighting, and wasting time in internet cafes were never addressed properly. When I married into the family, I tried to keep Hannah away from bad influences and encouraged Danny to stay clear of gambling and other vices, hoping to steer them onto the right path. But their grandmother always played the good cop, shielding them from my discipline, and the three of them constantly opposed me. What was I thinking enduring all this? Chapter 7. My mother-in-law decided to move in, making up her mind to stay indefinitely. I stopped the separation charade and occasionally invited Jenny over. My mother-in-law was excessively fawning over Jenny, almost treating her like royalty, her ingratiating behavior making Jenny feel smug and superior. "Hannah, go make dinner." "I'll chat with Jenny." "Hannah, pour some tea." "Can't you see Jenny's cup is empty?" "Hannah, drive Jenny home. We can't risk anything happening to her." My mother-in-law bossed me around, and I complied, serving Jenny like a maid. For years, Jenny felt overshadowed by me, but in such moments she savored the feeling of superiority, basking in the pleasure of having me under her thumb. As I drove her home, she remarked, "Your mother-in-law is quite nice." "Yes, she really likes you," I teased. "To outsiders, you'd think you two were mother and daughter-in-law." Jenny beamed with pride. When I returned home, it was already past 1 in the morning. Danny was still not home. In the past, I would have been frantic, calling him repeatedly, which usually enraged him to the point of near violence. This time I didn't care. Harry, however, was worried, questioning why I wasn't concerned about the kids. I replied, "When I tried to manage them, you accused me of causing turmoil. Now that I'm not involved, you blame me again. Harry, I'm starting to think you married me just to have a rich heiress to take care of your precious children." Harry, momentarily speechless, glared at me, clearly puzzled by my change in attitude. My mother-in-law tried to comfort him. "They're teenagers just like you were back then. If they turn out like you, they'll be very successful." Harry shot her a warning look, and she realized her mistake, nervously glancing at me. I pretended not to hear and asked, "Is Hannah back?" Harry, looking weary, rubbed his temples. "She said she's staying at a friend's house." I chuckled inwardly. Earlier, I had seen Hannah with her boyfriend, passed out drunk on a park bench. Teenage love can be reckless, often leading to regrettable decisions. In my previous life, I would have been desperate, taking great pains to bring her home. No matter how much she screamed and fought, I would have insisted on keeping her on the right path. The more I did, the more they resented me. Why bother? Chapter 8. Harry asked to borrow money, saying his company was struggling. I avoided his gaze, continuing to wash dishes. I don't have much money on hand. Harry pressed. What about your parents? I'll pay them back in a quarter with interest. Feigning guilt, I kept my head down. Harry, I've fallen out with them, but I do have a house I can sell urgently. How about that? He noticed my evasiveness and grew more displeased. Forget it. I'll find another way. Just as I breathed a sigh of relief, he asked, by the way, with so many companies going bankrupt lately, is your dad's business okay? I dropped a plate, shattering it. No, everything's fine, I stammered, hastily picking up the pieces. Don't worry. My dad's faced tougher challenges. He'll get through this. Harry eyed me suspiciously. I quickly added, maybe you could ask Jenny for help. Harry looked puzzled. Jenny? She has money. Her family is far wealthier than mine, I said. She's a hidden gem. Only I know her true background. Harry was skeptical. She doesn't seem that wealthy. Are you sure? Absolutely. She once told me her dad forbade her from revealing their wealth, especially to men. I laughed. Rich families fear gold-digging sons-in-law. They have to be very careful. Harry nodded, slowly buying into my story. Yeah, there are too many people like that nowadays. Better safe than sorry. As I disposed of the shards, I continued. Jenny always said she'd only marry a man who truly loves her, not for her money. Harry chuckled. I guess that makes sense. Soon after, Harry claimed he had a fishing trip with friends and left. I wasted no time contacting my lawyer, quietly moving my assets. Not a penny more than necessary would be left for Harry. Chapter 9. Harry and his family grew increasingly cold toward me. My mother-in-law constantly found fault with me, enraged that I wouldn't buy her younger son a house, calling me stingy. Danny blamed me for withholding his allowance, hindering his ability to hang out with friends, visit casinos, and flaunt his wealth. As for Hannah, she rarely came home. My mother-in-law, who favored boys, didn't care much. Harry, busy wooing Jenny, had no time to discipline his children. He assumed I would handle it, believing that if the children went astray, I would be the one most heartbroken. Jenny visited more frequently, practically becoming the lady of the house, enjoying royal treatment. During one rare family meal, I was ignored while Jenny was the center of attention. Jenny, you love shrimp. Harry, peel some for her. My mother-in-law suggested with a smile, nudging Harry. Harry immediately set down his chopsticks and began peeling shrimp for Jenny. Jenny glanced at me, pretending to be reluctant. This isn't right, she said, but her smug expression betrayed her delight. Hannah, suddenly acting obedient, sweetly offered Jenny some food. Aunt Jenny, I made this dish just for you. I hope you like it. Jenny accepted, beaming. Hannah, you're so well behaved. Your mother always says you're rebellious, but I don't see it. Hannah shot me a venomous look but maintained her sweet demeanor toward Jenny. Aunt Jenny, don't listen to my mom. She's just jealous because she can't have kids and envies my health. Jenny pretended to be shocked but clearly relished the gossip. Danny, feeling wronged, also complained to Jenny. Mom's so stingy now. She won't even give me spending money. I can't keep up with my gaming equipment and keep getting crushed. Jenny generously pulled out a wad of cash from her purse, handing it to Danny. If your mom won't give you money, Aunt Jenny will. Here, take it. Thanks, Aunt Jenny. Danny cheered, overjoyed. Jenny didn't forget about Hannah, giving her some money too. Hannah hugged her affectionately, purring like a contented kitten, while the whole family laughed, enjoying the harmony. Aunt Jenny's generosity made them all happy, but I noticed her LV bag had been swapped for a counterfeit. She must have spent quite a bit to win over these two siblings. Chapter 10. Harry finally proposed divorce. I sobbed, pleading with him not to abandon me in my time of need. Harry, my dad's company is bankrupt. I have nowhere to go. Please don't divorce me. Help my dad, please. Harry, usually gentle, coldly pushed me away. Hannah, you refused to buy my brother a house. You're selfish. How can you expect me to help your family now? My mother-in-law, triumphant, chimed in. Hannah, let's be honest. Harry is already with Jenny, and she's pregnant. What? Aghast in shock, Danny, gloating, added. Serves you right. You're so stingy, not even giving me allowance. Luckily, Aunt Jenny will make me a true rich kid. He seemed to fantasize about a future of endless gaming and gambling, laughing so hard his eyes turned to slits. Hannah was even more blatant, shouting, You barren old witch, finally you're out. You have no idea how much I despise seeing you. I tearfully asked, Hannah, can't you at least speak up for me? Get lost. You think you're my mom? Aunt Jenny is my mom now. Stop flattering yourself. Hannah loudly declared. You're just a barren hen. My dad marrying you was the worst mistake ever. Danny, sneering, added, You better leave now. Aunt Jenny is wealthy and powerful. If you don't go, she might not let you live. Exactly. What good does it do to stay? Get out. Hannah, her face twisted with hatred, echoed. There was no point in arguing further. I tearfully agreed to divorce Harry. The process was shockingly smooth. Harry was eager to rid himself of a bankrupt wife and be with the alluring, wealthy Jenny. Outside the civil office, Harry hypocritically advised, Forget about me, Hannah. Don't do anything drastic. We were once married, and I still hope you find happiness. I smiled. Of course I will be fine. But Harry, your retribution has just begun. Chapter 11. Less than a month after our divorce, Harry married Jenny. Jenny came to flaunt her engagement ring. Harry had this custom made for us. I bet you never had anything like this. I looked at her unimpressed and asked, Are they treating you well? Of course, she gloated, caressing her belly. Harry's mother dotes on me. The kids are so obedient. And Harry, he's incredibly attentive. I nodded. I'm glad to hear that. Jenny's smile faltered. She had come to provoke me, expecting to see me break down. But I remained calm, showing no signs of stress from the divorce or bankruptcy. Hannah, what are you playing at? She knew me well enough to sense something was amiss. I just smiled, raising my coffee cup in a toast. Jenny, you guessed right. I hate you more than I hate Harry. In my past life, Jenny had sent me photos of her and Harry together, with her face obscured anonymously. The shock gave me a heart attack, landing me in the hospital. Jenny then called my parents, who rushed to my side in a storm, meeting a fatal accident. How could I not hold her and Harry accountable for my parents' deaths? Years later, my accident that left me paralyzed was also her doing, tampering with my brakes. I was left helpless, with Harry siding with her, offering no justice. Yes, I was foolish, but Jenny deserved her punishment even more. Seeing her confusion, I added, that family's needs are endless. Once you can't meet them, who knows what they'll do? Jenny, recalling daily events, turned pale. Before my divorce, I had installed hidden cameras in the house. Watching Jenny's declining household status became my new amusement. Danny and Hannah, believing Jenny was a wealthier heiress than me, constantly demanded money. Today it was $500, tomorrow $1,000. Jenny, a regular working woman, couldn't keep up. The siblings showed no gratitude, giving her hell when she couldn't provide. Jenny, not one to suffer silently, retaliated. Carrying Harry's child, she had no use for his non-biological children, pushing Harry to send them away. But Harry refused. So she subtly encouraged Hannah to live with her boyfriend and Danny to gamble, hoping Harry would lose patience and kick them out. Chapter 12. After dinner with my parents, Harry called, sounding worn out. Hannah, is Jenny really a wealthy heiress? That's what she says, I replied, watching the chaos in my former home via hidden cameras. My mother-in-law and Jenny were in a heated argument. The cause? My mother-in-law demanded Jenny buy her younger son a house in a good school district. Jenny, stunned by the audacity, called her a lunatic. Initially, my mother-in-law held her tongue, thinking Jenny was still assessing them. But as Jenny's pregnancy progressed, she grew impatient, demanding immediate action. Jenny, unable to afford such luxuries herself, was caught in a bind. So the two women clashed daily, with Harry growing more suspicious of Jenny's true financial status. Harry's life must have been quite difficult lately, With business problems piling up and Jenny unable to help, these problems were my carefully crafted gifts to him. Before marrying Harry, I was also considered a business elite, and with my parents still around, I had firm backing. Without the fog of being love-struck, I easily outmaneuvered Harry, the cunning man who thought he could control me. In the past, I was too focused on Harry, too immersed in that family, making sacrifices for them and ruining my own life in the process. Now, I was more devoted to my career, being filial to my parents, and occasionally keeping an eye on Harry's household from afar. One evening after work, I happened to see Hannah. She was yelling at a young man, trying to physically attack a girl behind him. The young man protected the girl, and together they beat Hannah up. If it hadn't been for passers-by intervening, who knows how badly she would have been hurt. I watched from my car, remembering how, in my previous life, Hannah had abused me while I was paralyzed. The scene before me felt oddly satisfying. After someone called the police and the young couple fled, I got out and pretended to be concerned as I helped Hannah up. "Hannah, what happened? Did that man hit you? And why did he defend that girl?" I asked, feigning shock. Hannah, disheveled and bruised, with blood still trickling from her nose, saw me and her eyes flashed with anger. She yanked her arm away from me. "None of your business," she spat, her attitude defiant. "I was just having a moment with my man. What's it to you?" I remained silent. If getting beaten up was her idea of romance, then so be it. Chapter 13. Hannah got pregnant. Harry informed me of this development. He was worn out, his life a constant struggle between business troubles and family chaos. Every time he came home, it was either Jenny complaining or his mother berating him, blaming him for marrying a fake heiress. His business problems persisted, as if he were being targeted by unseen enemies, leading his company toward bankruptcy. But these were secondary issues. What truly pained him was his children. "Danny has been missing for half a month. He stole money from me and hasn't been heard from since," Harry said, his eyes red, voice choked. In tears, he looked at me with those deep, soulful eyes that once made me melt. I smiled, unfazed by his theatrics. Danny was doing just fine, living it up in casinos, gambling away what little he had, enjoying a carefree life. In the past, I had forbidden Danny from gambling, fearing he'd become an addict and ruin our lives. But whenever I tried to discipline him, my mother-in-law would scream that I was heartless, denying her grandson his pleasures. Harry would blame me for failing as a mother, accusing me of causing family discord. Now, with Jenny in charge, she actively encouraged Danny's downfall, hoping Harry would eventually send him away. Harry was desperate about Danny, but Hannah's situation was even worse. "Hannah's pregnant, and it's with that boyfriend of hers," Harry said, his voice breaking. He gazed at me with such sorrow, as if I were the only one who could save him. "Hannah, ever since you left, the family has fallen apart. Danny and Hannah need you. Only you can set them straight," he pleaded. I pretended to be conflicted. "But Harry, you married Jenny. How can I come back and take care of the children?" "Hannah, Jenny means nothing. You're the one I truly love," Harry insisted, his grip tightening on my hand. "For the children's sake, please help us one more time." Chapter 14. When Harry and I returned to the house, his mother was in the middle of another argument with Jenny, still demanding a house and a car. My former mother-in-law was at her wits' end. "If you don't buy my younger son a house, get out. You tricked us. You're nothing but a sham," she screamed, her voice hoarse from crying. Jenny, equally furious, snapped, "Who are you calling a fake? You think you're some kind of queen? You're just a country bumpkin. I regret marrying into this family." The two women were at each other's throats. Jenny might have had the upper hand, but her pregnancy held her back, forcing her to be more cautious. My former mother-in-law had no such concerns. With Danny as her cherished grandson, she didn't care much for Jenny's unborn child. Harry, ignoring the chaos, took me to see Hannah. Hannah refused to come home, fearing Jenny's wrath and the gossip of neighbors. She preferred the squalor of her rented room, where she constantly fought with her boyfriend. When we arrived, Hannah was sobbing on the steps of her rundown building. Her boyfriend had taken off, leaving her with nothing but the clothes on her back, and had blocked her on every platform. I watched her cry, feeling nothing. In my previous life, she had tormented me, blaming me for ruining her life with her boyfriend, refusing the opportunities one offered her. She had rejected the piano lessons, the chance to study abroad, and the respectable young men I introduced to her. Now she was reaping what she had sown. I drove them home, observing Harry and Hannah from the rearview mirror. Harry knew deep down that her boyfriend was bad news. He understood that if Hannah didn't change, her life would be destroyed. Hannah's tearful defiance was a stark contrast to my calm indifference. Back home, Jenny was thrilled to hear about Hannah's pregnancy. "This tramp is an embarrassment," she sneered. "She needs to be sent back to wherever she came from." Harry, exhausted, asked, "And what do you suggest?" "Send her back to her village," Jenny replied coldly. "She doesn't belong here." I lowered my head, hiding my smile. Harry wouldn't abandon his daughter, suggesting instead that Jenny take Hannah for a consultation, without making a scene. Hannah, still young, had a long future ahead. As I left, Harry grabbed me, his voice a low, seductive murmur. "Hannah," he whispered, his words full of longing, "I finally understand how much you did for this family." His mother didn't favor him out of love, but because he had achieved success, married a wealthy woman, and settled in the city. Favoring wasn't the same as loving. His mother's constant demands, his brother's laziness, and the relentless need for more had worn him down. Now, without me to buffer the chaos, he was overwhelmed. I gently pushed him away and walked out without looking back. Chapter 15. In an attempt to save money, Jenny took Hannah to a shady clinic. The result was devastating. Hannah was left unable to have children. Still young, she didn't grasp the full weight of this loss, instead channeling her hatred towards Jenny, using every opportunity to torment her. Unable to get rid of Hannah, Jenny realized too late that Hannah and Danny were Harry's biological children. Who would have guessed that Harry, at 18, had fathered twins? Jenny and Hannah's battles turned the house into a war zone. Harry, desperate to escape, often sought me out to vent. Away from that toxic environment, I had regained my composure and enjoyed my newfound peace. One night, after Harry got drunk at a bar, I took him to a hotel, lay beside him, and took a photo of us together. I sent it to Jenny, just as she had once done to me. When Jenny arrived at the hotel, heavily pregnant and frantic, I was already gone. Just like in my past life, she was so enraged that she ended up in the hospital. She had no idea who sent the photo, and Harry would never admit to arranging the meeting. I visited her in the hospital, bringing a bouquet of carnations. She lay there, pale and ghostly. "Jenny, was it you? Did you send that photo?" she snarled, her voice filled with venom. Once a beautiful, sophisticated woman, she now looked haggard and old. I feigned innocence. "What are you talking about? I don't understand." "It was you. I know it was you," she screamed, her voice filled with desperation. "Why are you doing this to me? Are you trying to drive me insane?" "Jenny," I said softly, brushing her hair back from her forehead. "You betrayed me first." Jealous of my life, she had stolen Harry, wrecked my family, and exposed me to harsh truths, pushing me from one nightmare into another. I could thank her for opening my eyes, but I could never forgive her for causing my parents' deaths. "Take care of yourself," I said with a smile, tucking the blanket around her. "The best is yet to come." Chapter 16. I subtly hinted to Jenny that Danny and Hannah were Harry's biological children. Upon learning the truth, Jenny suffered a miscarriage from the shock. She finally understood why Harry never wanted to send the twins away. They were his own flesh and blood. The constant turmoil at home drained Harry. He sought me out more frequently, pleading with me to return. "Hannah, I really can't live without you. Since you left, my family has fallen apart. Please come back to me," he begged, tears streaming down his face. Harry had aged rapidly. His once handsome face now bore deep lines of exhaustion and despair. His mother had never truly loved him. She had only relied on him because he was the eldest, had moved to the city, married a wealthy woman, and provided for the family. Now, with me gone, he had to deal with his mother's endless demands, his brother's laziness, and his children's waywardness. He missed the stability I brought, the way I managed everything, allowing him to focus on his career. But I had no reason to shoulder that burden again. I smiled, lifting his chin to look into his eyes. Harry, you look so pathetic now. His face fell, disbelief etched across his features. He had always relied on his looks to manipulate me, but now his charms were worthless. You really think I've forgotten how you cheated with Jenny, how coldly you divorced me, or how you faked my infertility to raise your kids in our home? Each accusation hit him like a hammer, his face growing paler with every word. Stop crying. You look even uglier when you cry, I said, wiping away his tears. You have so much more to worry about. He had no idea what I meant until he received news that Danny had been detained. Danny had fallen deeper into gambling, accumulating massive debts. The casino had taken him hostage, demanding millions for his release. Harry scraped together the money by mortgaging the company, selling his luxury cars and properties, and taking out huge loans. He eventually rescued Danny, but not before the boy lost a hand as a warning for delayed payment. Half a year later, I ran into Harry again. He was a shadow of his former self, now working menial jobs, humiliated by young bosses who ordered him around. I couldn't help but reminisce about our wedding, where he had been the charming, confident groom. He was finished, unable to recover. Even without my intervention, my father would never have let him off the hook. Harry had no means to rebuild his life. He had forgotten that his success was built on my family's support, without which he was nothing. And Jenny? She now regretted everything. She had loved the suave, successful Harry, not this broken man. Harry refused to let her leave, threatening to kill her family if she tried. My former mother-in-law had gone to live with her younger son, where she faced daily abuse from her daughter-in-law, who was far more ruthless than I had ever been. Even Hannah and Danny had come to me, begging for help. Hannah, finally realizing her mistakes, wanted me to send her abroad to study and find her a wealthy husband. I asked her why I should help her. She was speechless. I pressed on, reminding her of her mistakes: dating a scoundrel, getting pregnant, dropping out of school, and ruining her chances for a decent future. Wealthy, eligible men wouldn't want someone with her past. Hannah fell silent, her ambitions crumbling. Danny, desperate for money, called me Mom for the first time. He thought I would be moved and give him everything he wanted. Instead, I had security escort him out, treating him like the beggar he was. These children, once my treasures, had become my tormentors. Harry, too, realizing he had lost everything without me. Harry, thinking he could manipulate another wealthy woman, now faced his downfall. I ignored his pleas, stood up, and walked away. Harry, we're done. Live your life and I'll live mine. I had a bright future ahead, free from the chains of that toxic family. As I drove away, I glanced back one last time. Harry was crumpled on the ground, sobbing. This was their ending, the fate they deserved for their betrayal and cruelty. And I was finally free to start anew.